control who decides your case. ADR is faster and less stressful than fighting in court, and it is a great way to resolve divorce, employment, or commercial disputes. ADR is now offered through the Nassau County Bar Association. Find out more about how ADR can help resolve your dispute by calling 516-747-4070 or visit nassaubar.org.
Once again, we continue with Law You Should Know. From the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denise, Corker, and Sauer, here is attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome back to Law You Should Know. We're talking about real estate broker agreements. And this program is helpful to real estate brokers, consumers, and attorneys can earn CLE credit by listening to this program. Just make sure you write down the important code at the end of the program and contact the Nassau Academy of Law at 516-747-4070 for further information. Also assisting me today is Brandon Kaufman. He's a student here at Nassau Community involved with WHPC. My guest and expert in this area is Andrew M. Leib. He's with Leib at Law in Manhasset, New York. He's also involved in real estate and involved in training real estate brokers. Another question from Brandon.
Okay, for these listing agreements, what is the usual fee?
Well, the brokers that are listening to this are hoping I'm going to say 100%. But I'm thinking that we're going to have to give some reality. If you're going to hire a broker on the high end, we see it at 6%. A lot of places in Long Island are trying to jam that down to 5 or 4%. But, Brandon, I want you to know, for consumers out there that are really pinching that penny, you can get what's called a flat fee listing as well, where there's certain companies that will just charge you a fee to put it on the MLS yourself. So it goes from as if you want to get a broker on the Econo Lodge to one on the Ritz-Carlton level. It just depends on what you want to pay for.
So it might be cheaper if you're doing a lot of the work yourself, if you're handling the open houses, if you're showing buyers the property.
That's what a lot of consumers' presumption would be. I'll tell you my experience being very involved in the brokerage world. As Ken mentioned, I train this field. We have 7,000 students in my school in real estate brokerage Leib school. And in that school, what we've learned is that, unfortunately, it's not about the work you do, Ken. It's about whether you get blackballed in the community. What I mean by that is you want a big name, you want a big broker, you want someone that other brokers want to work with. Before the break, we were talking about the MLS. You want a place where other companies are going to say, I know that listing agent, I trust that listing agent, they're going to share commission with me, and that's how you're going to bring all the buyers to the house.
And that brings us to our next question. Do they share the commissions under some circumstances?
Great question. So I mentioned before the MLS, Stratus MLS system. That's part of the Long Island Board of Realtors. It's not the exact same company, two separate nonprofits, but what they have is what's called a universal co-brokerage agreement. In Manhattan, they have something similarly called the REBNY Universal Co-Brokerage Agreement for the Real Estate Board of New York. What a co-brokerage agreement is how two different companies split a commission. The Long Island one allows the listing agent to offer whatever percentage they want to the person who's bringing the buyer, known as the selling agent. And they can offer a different commission whether that selling agent's negotiating for the buyer or against the buyer. So there's a uniform mechanism we do it, but not a uniform commission rate in the Long Island marketplace.
Okay, is this fee negotiable with the broker?
If you're asking me if the fee on the listing's negotiable, it certainly is. But when I train brokers, I say to do this. Write down the services that you would provide and say, if you want me to serve lobster tails at your broker's open house, it's one fee. If you want me to just put your property on the MLS, it's another fee. So it goes to what Ken was saying a little while ago about commiserate with numbers, but yes, it is negotiable. But I would suggest you negotiate the services, not the fees, with the brokers. Yes, sir?
How do you determine the amount in the fee?
How do you determine it? Mm-hmm. So, as I said, the ranges, if you're going to be hiring a brokerage firm in Long Island, is generally between 4 and 6%. And you're going to write down the services you're expecting. For illustration, I just listed my own house. And I said, by this date, the broker's going to do a broker's open house. They're going to serve XYZ at the house. By this date, they're going to advertise my property in XYZ newspaper. I said, by this date, they're going to put it in this newspaper. And we had different standards of what they're going to do.
And maybe do something on the web.
On the web, a virtual open house, the whole thing.
For the consumer, you want it as detailed and with deadlines, etc., the broker might just want to leave it open in general?
Well, I would say the broker leaves it open, but once we get into details, deadlines are essential on both sides.
And it's important you can negotiate the fee.
Correct.
You can shop around, but again, it might be different brokers might be better known, might have fewer buyers available, might deliver what they say they will. So, but you can try to shop around, and the time to negotiate is before you sign the agreement.
Once you sign, the game's over. And I want to go back again one more time. Yes, you can negotiate fees, and I recommend negotiating fees. One way to negotiate fees that might help you with your question is what happens if the same broker lists the property and brings the buyer? Under that situation, a seller would have a lot more leverage to say, hey, you would get 3% on both sides if it was a 6% listing. Maybe if you're the same person getting these 3%, why don't we move down to 4.5% if you're on both sides?
And also, if it's going to be an exclusive right to sell, where that one broker is just going to have an exclusive agreement, theirs only, not put for other brokers on MLS.
Whoa. Let me cut you off, because exclusive right to sell is put on MLS.
Okay.
I just want to say that again. The one that's not put on MLS is the open listing. So the exclusive right to sell is saying, I'm protected and it's okay for me to put it on MLS. It's okay for me to advertise it with anyone else, because if anyone tries to cut me out, I'm still getting paid.
Okay, but if you just had an open listing with one broker,
correct,
so you're locking them in for their fee, which is of legitimate concern for them, and they're not going to share it, you might want to... they might be willing to take a less commission.
I've not seen it structured, but I do understand what you're saying. I think what you're saying to me is, if you're only using one broker, and that broker only gets paid if they procure the buyer, not if I, the seller, procured it myself, not if another broker, I guess there wouldn't be another broker, I guess that would be a leverage point. But if it was me again, your goal in the Long Island market when you're a seller is to sell your house for as fast as possible for the most amount of money. Again, as fast as possible for the most amount of money. So if you're going to do that, what you want to do is you want the broker to be in. You don't want them to be beat up before the listing starts.
You want them to have an incentive, too.
100%. Yes, sir.
You emphasized the speed of selling the house. Does the value go down or up depending on how long a listing stays up?
So when it takes longer, your market gets stale, and people are going to inquire why it's been on the market so long. That being said, markets change. So if the housing market increases, the delay would help you. That being said, ever lived in a house when someone came to go see your house on a Saturday? It's a drag. You're sitting there, now you got to clean the house. I have a 4-year-old. He puts toys everywhere. If they're going to show my house, it takes me an hour and a half to clean the place. So as soon as I could be done with that crazy, terrible experience, the better.
And also, the shoppers may be looking for new, fresh listings.
100%.
So it's hard to create that attention.
That's the staleness that we're definitely talking about. And they're going to ask it, and it's going to give the buyer a leverage point.
And is that another reason to...
how long does this agreement last?
So I see them for a year. I see them for 6 months. I've seen them as short as 3 months. I really wouldn't advise giving a broker less than 3 months, because you want them to have that broker's open house. And I've said that word a few times, and I just want to emphasize it so we're all on the same page. There's two types of open houses. There's a public open house, and there's a broker's open house. As a seller, you're disinterested in the public open house. Rarely do people come in that are in the public and see your house and buy it. Instead, that's a showcase for the broker to have new potential buyers for other properties. But a broker's open house brings the whole brokerage community there to preview the house. And in that situation, particularly if you're serving those lobster tails I showed before, the brokers will come and they'll all be the messengers telling their clients how great the house is.
And they can get a nice, if they know they're going to get a fair piece of the action, they have an incentive. And it's also going to be, new. But you don't want to give them too much time, because if it's a 6-month or 9-month agreement, you may have other plans and the broker may not do things on day one.
And I want to go back to when we were saying the things they had to do, because I'm a huge fan, particularly on the $2 million plus range, of you putting in deadlines and what they have to do by those deadlines.
And you can always renew the agreement. You could say they've been doing a good job, but maybe it was the winter. You can always renew it. But once you sign 6 months or 9 months and you find they're not being productive, you may be locked into the agreement.
Do agreements vary in the city and upstate?
So agreements vary in Long Island, in Suffolk County, in Nassau County, in Queens, because the companies are free to write their own agreements. Now, there's standard agreements that the boards give. And I mentioned some of the boards. I mentioned Long Island Board of Realtors. In the city, they have Real Estate Board of New York. In Westchester, they have the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. In Staten Island, they have Cybor. There's all these different clubs that give agreements, but the bigger companies will get tailored agreements just for themselves, which we draft.
And a lot of these agreements may be pre-printed, but it's something you don't have to sign. This is a free contract between two people, and if you can try to go with a different broker who may have a less onerous agreement, you can consult with your own attorney. Be you the seller, let them look at it, and maybe they can tell you what could be problematic or tell you what some options might be.
Let me echo what you just said. I hope the consumers are hearing this. And I'm a brokerage attorney, so I'm not the one you're going to consult with. But you need to consult with your own attorney. You're selling $1 million house, which in Long Island, unfortunately, isn't the cheapest. You're selling $1 million house, and you're giving someone 6%. That's a $60,000 contract. Get advice.
And especially since you're only going to pay the lawyer a small percentage of that, so you want to see a knowledgeable lawyer first before you sign any agreements.
Well, I'm going to make it even better. You might not have to pay that lawyer anything, because if you're going to use them as your transactional attorney, most transactional attorneys will give it a once-over and give you a little advice as long as you sign the retainer as the transactional attorney.
But if you sign it first, that lawyer is not going to be able to help you as much. If you say, I'm hiring you, the lawyer, to represent me in the sale, as part of the service, they will look at this agreement before you sign it and tell you, because you can, even though it's on a form, you can say, I don't like this provision or that provision, or I want to change the length or change the amount of the commission. Before you sign, if two minds agree on it, the contract can be changed.
If you get nothing else out of this entire program we're doing right now, that's the point. Before you sign a brokerage agreement, see your lawyer. Before you sign a brokerage agreement, see your lawyer. And for the brokers, don't be upset about that, because if we have clarity and everyone's on the same page, everyone's happy.
Okay, we're running out of time, unfortunately. The CLE code for today's program is NAL 1899. That's NAL 1899. Please keep in mind, whatever you've heard has been presented as information only. You should get legal advice from your own attorney, and as we said, see the lawyer first. You're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. If you missed any part of the program, it should be available as a free podcast by searching WHPC on iTunes. Please join us next week at this same time for another program on Law You Should Know.